It's very cold today. And I am not very good with cold, so I am kind of losing it today. Hi, everyone. Hello, guys. I'm live earlier than scheduled. I'm sorry, 11 minutes earlier. Hi, Sky. I found something on Twitter that I really want to show you because wow. And for those of you who still think that Russians are protecting something, and for those of you who still think that Russians are going to stop at Russia, I think that it's going to be a very eye-opening experience at Ukraine or something like that. It's going to be a very eye-opening experience. Hi, Netlin. Hi, Lauren. Hi, Solomon. Hi, Kathleen. And hi, Theo. Hi, JD. Hi, Kareen. Heroyam Slava. So Cindy is feeling a little better. I bought apple cider vinegar. Hi, David. And hi, Forrest. Hi, Larissa. I've been cleaning her ears. For those of you who don't know, I did a live a little earlier today. Hi, Kat. And I was talking about how Cindy woke me up at 6 a.m. and she was like going at her ears really, really, really heavily. And I was like super scared. She seemed incredibly irritated. Anytime I try to stop her from like scratching her ears, she hides under my bed and I can't get her out of there. So I made an executive decision to sleep on the couch with her. Hi, Grand Rapids, and hi, George. So I made an executive decision to sleep on the couch with her from like 6 a.m. Well, I didn't sleep from 6 to 8. And then from 8 to 10, we slept on the couch. So I think that Cindy's doctor is, I'm not going to call them an idiot. I'm going to just say is not very good. And what I suspect Cindy has is a yeast infection in her ear. And so I started using apple cider vinegar. I also ordered some stuff from Chewy. I really hope that my vet just approves the medication that I chose, which is from yeast infection, because I don't want to pay again to go to a vet to bring Cindy to the vet, because it would be the third time I bring her to the vet. And the both first 2 times, they did not prescribe her what she needed to be prescribed, despite me telling them what I think it is. And it looks like I'm right, because I was cleaning her ears yesterday and she had this like brown discharge in her ears, which is very similar to a yeast infection or like a fungal infection. But yeah, so I slept on the couch with her. We've been using apple cider vinegar for the past like couple of hours. I've done it already a couple of times because, you know, she's been just like very irritated, and it seems like it's helping a little bit. So we're going to continue on that path, and we're going to bring Cindy back to normal. Hi, Joe. Yeah, so that was the beginning of my day today, and it was a lot. Solution with the numbing agent they can prescribe too. Yeah, for sure. I mean, they can prescribe a lot of things, but I've realized over the years that veterinarians in New York City actually don't care for your dog. They care for making as much money out of you as possible. So what I try to do is I try to text my vet who's in Ukraine, and my vet in Ukraine does this like she basically tells me what human medications work the same way on dogs and just tells me what to go get that's like over the counter. And that's what I do a lot of the times, because I honestly think that like in New York City, bringing your dog to the vet means that they are going to charge you like $1,000 for absolutely useless stuff just because they want to make money out of you. And there have been so many times that I've gone to the vet and they were like, oh yeah, we're going to do this. And we're going to give her I was charged like $300 when Cindy was a baby for an Epsom bath for her paws. Like, you can literally just tell me to buy Epsom salts and put my dog in an Epsom salt bath. You know, like it shouldn't cost $300 to $400 for you to Epsom bath for my dog. Oh, hi, Mariana. Thank you. Welcome to the Spy Lair. Thank you, Todd. But so yeah, it was ridiculous. And hi, Kiporisik. Hi, Gap. Hi, Kayla. Hydrocortisone applied topically. So it's inside of her ear. So we're gonna do apple cider vinegar for now, and we're gonna wait for chewy stuff to arrive. And we're gonna do a lot of little prophylactic things. I also ordered some like antibacterial wipes and stuff. So we're gonna just like double down on everything we've been doing and and do it better, you know. So I found something very interesting. Are you okay, child?
Yes.
You look.
Headache.
Oh, I'm sorry. But yeah, so I found something very interesting online that I want to show you guys. Oh, thank you, Mariana. Oh my gosh, it's so cute. Heroям Slava. Oh my gosh. Hi, Taz. Oh my gosh, thank you, Melissa. Hi, Melissa. Okay, so I want to show you something. I'm going to show it to you on here and on here. Well, it's going to be full screen on on horizontal social medias, and it's going to be, I'll just like reverse my camera on vertical social medias. For those of you who don't know, I'm streaming on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and TikTok simultaneously, all under the same name. So whichever platform you are at, if you consider a different platform more convenient, you're welcome to move on there. And the name is the same across all social media. It's YEWLEEA. And let me show you what I wanted to show you, because here's something. For those of you who are still doubting that Russia is going to stop at Ukraine and Ukraine should just cede territory, here is an eye-opening situation. So this is going to be a poem read by this man whose name is Kirill Strimousov, and he is the so-called head of the Kherson Independent Republic, basically of a sham republic. He's Russian, and he is going to read you a poem in which he tells you what he considers Russian land. Hi, Juju. Yes. Oh my gosh, 1 second. For some reason, my settings, like lately, my settings have been so like screwed up. Okay, so Twitter. Do you guys, let me see. You should see this. Okay, so I'm going to make this full screen. I'm going to take you here and, okay. Are you ready? There are subtitles to this, so you can read them and see what he's saying.
Вижу горы и долины, вижу реки и поля. Это русское приволье, это родина моя. Вижу Прагу и Варшаву, Будапешт и Бухарест. Это русская держава. Сколько здесь любимых мест. Вижу пагоды в Шри-Ланке и Корею, и Китай. Где бы я ни ехал в танке, всюду мой любимый край. Вижу речку Амазонку, крокодилов вижу я. Это русская сторонка, это родина моя. Недалече пирамиды, Нил течет богат водой. Омывает русский берег, Русь моя, горжусь тобой. Вижу Вашингтон в долине, Даллас вижу и Техас. Как приятно здесь, в России, выпить вкусный русский квас. Над Сиднеем солнце всходит, утконос сопит в пруду. Репродуктор гимн заводит, с русским гимном в день войду. Вот индейцы курят трубку и протягивают мне. Все на свете любят русских на родной моей земле.
Oh, sorry. I just thought that I was better with my microphone. Hello, everyone. Hi, 300 Live. Hi, Otaz. I saw you. Hi, Bam. So basically, yeah, here is the thing. So this man is the head of the so-called Kherson Republic, Independent Republic, whatever. He's Russian, and he was reading this morale boosting poem for Russian troops, and he was talking about all of these countries around the world that he considers Russian, and they include the U.S., they include Egypt, Sri Lanka, they include China and Korea, basically the entire world. He mentioned most of the world and said this is Russian land. And just for you to understand how big the imperial ambitions of Russian people are. And here's the thing. This guy is not some big Russian politician that was in Russian politics, and he is he is he's not a big Russian politician who was always in politics, and he's not someone who has been in the biz for a while for you guys to say, or not you, for someone who's watching, or for anyone to really say, for anyone in the West to really say oh, but this is Putin's cronies, and stuff like that. No, this man is barely he became a Putin crony, sure. But that's the thing, this dude believes it. One of the reasons why he's the head of the so-called republic is because he's brainwashed enough for them to put him in charge. One of the worst parts is that what I've noticed is these heads of these so-called republics there's quite a few differences. So when you look at all of these Russian propagandists, they say this stuff for money. And they say this stuff because they want, they want to be on Putin's good side, and they want, and they sort of want to have some recognition, and because that's their job. It's their job to say this, and they don't actually believe it. None of these people Solovyov, Skabeyeva, or Simonyan, they don't believe any of what they say, right? It's just brainwashing for your average common Russian who's sitting somewhere in Novosibirsk or Murmansk and listening to them, but they don't believe it. Now, these heads of republics, however, is a whole different story. These people, in order for them to start creating this brainwash, in order for them to lead this army or whatever, they had to be actually brainwashed. So they're the victims of this propaganda. And so the people who are the DPR heads, the LPR heads, the Zaporizhia heads, the Kherson heads, these people actually believe it. They actually believe that there are Ukrainian Nazis. They actually think that this is a real thing. They think that they're at war with NATO. That's what it seems like. So Zvezda on Twitch is asking, they don't believe it. This is confusing. Okay, so here's the thing. Russians do believe that they're superior. Russians do believe that the great Russian Empire was built on Kiev Rus, right? So they believe the history of this, right? They do believe that part. They don't believe the part about Ukrainian Nazis. They don't believe the part about radioactive pigeons. They don't believe that they're at war with NATO. These people have access to too much information to actually believe that. They're just doing this. They're just saying this stuff for your average common Russian. And this is just their job to do it, right? But then the people in the republics, let's say the minority Ukrainian population, 1% of the population that stayed, that isn't Russian, the super brainwashed Ukrainians, because that exists. There is a tiny little percent of a population of every one of these so-called republics that are either bought Ukrainians or brainwashed Ukrainians. It's a very tiny little percentage of the overall population, but it does exist. And those people are incredibly brainwashed. You'll come to find out when you see the interview with Tork, the next part, he's going to be telling you about this, because he's going to be talking about Russian captivity and the different types of people that he had to interact with there. And so the people who are DPR people, so one of the pseudo republics, right? they are genuinely brainwashed. Like, they think he is a Ukrainian Yahtzee. Like, they think he's literally like, and no matter what they ask him, no matter what his answers are, no matter how many times he explains to them how ridiculously how ridiculously it is, how ridiculous it is, and how little sense it makes, they would still just be like, no, our TV says that, so you are. So there is like no critical thinking skills whatsoever. It's just complete brainwash. And so these heads of republics and people who live in them, they're genuinely brainwashed. The people in Russia are brainwashed. The like Russian leaders who spread this stuff, and Russian propagandists, no, they're not brainwashed. They know it's all BS. Most of the Russian trolls know it's all BS. Because they just get like assignments, they don't actually believe it. They just do it for money. They just do it because it's their job. They just do it for whatever other reason, but they know it's garbage. If you look at the videos from Skabeeva, from Simonyan, from Solovyov, from like, I want to say 6-7 years ago, maybe actually 8 years and before, they all talk a very different game. None of them are talking about any Ukrainian Yahtzees. None of them are talking about any like crazy Russophobia. None of them are talking about any of these things. In fact, all of them seem to be pretty level-headed and say things like, well, who are we to criticize the US when, our level of hi Jilsam, like our level of education in Russia, and our level of like the state of our, literally one of the examples that Solovyov brought up in one of his older videos, which I actually have posted on my TikTok, was like, well, who are we to judge the United States when at least they have clean toilets, clean public toilets, thank you, Jen, and we don't even have that. So it's like they were talking a fair game. Like, they were talking reasonable things, that Russia, likes to criticize other nations for how bad everything is going. Yet when you go to Russia, there are some very common like normal things that are missing, like very common basic necessities and very common like evolved country, just not luxuries, but basics that are not there. And hi, Jillian. And so it's just one of those things where you can clearly see that these people are not like stupid. They know that what they're saying is like stories. It's just stories, and it's just brainwashing tactics. But they do it because they don't really these people don't really have morale, nor do they have integrity. It's just their job. That's how they make money. And well, they're Russian, And I think in the past 8 months, we've realized that Russians will do a lot of things for money. A lot of very, very wild things for money. Okay, so moving on to the thumbnail. Also, wait, there was a message from Evan that I want to read. So I'm going to put it up on the screen. I haven't read it yet, but I see it's long, so I'd like to read it. Yulia, I looked at this thing on paper before the invasion, and on paper it looks like the Russian military should have won pretty easily. So it looks like they've been exposed pretty badly. It's 8 months and they're no further toward whatever their goals are. Yeah, well, that's the whole thing, That's what I've been saying from the very beginning, right? And I'm going to read you an article that I wrote on Medium a little while ago because, Julia.medium.com, I think. I read it before, but I think that this kind of like explains a lot. This should explain a lot. It's not necessarily on that topic particularly, but it's very similar, and it explains why all of these things that we knew about Russia, or why we thought all of these things about Russia, and why it's so sort of like strange for Western audiences that Russian military is nothing like we thought it was, and things like that. So I'm going to read you this article again. Our next word. Oh my gosh. Gianmarco, your next foreign minister is going to be from Berlusconi's party. Oh no, that's awful. Oh no, you mean foreign relations minister? Oh, we just got an aid package from Italy. I guess that was the last one we're receiving. Oh man. But also Jesus Christ. I'm so sorry, guys. Okay, so Gianmarco is from Italy, and he's saying that their new foreign minister is going to be from the party of Berlusconi, and Berlusconi is like this former Italian prime minister who's just he's like Trump on steroids. Anyways, I'm going to read you this article again because I think that it's like a short read. It's a 5-minute read. I wrote it a couple of weeks ago, and it actually kind of encompasses a lot of these, like a lot of answers to a lot of questions, right? So here it is. Why is the West so eager to consume Russian propaganda? And by Russian propaganda, I mean like just believe in like Russian greatness and all of this stuff. Well, for one, it isn't new. It's so believable because you can seemingly trace evidence to back it up throughout history, be it about execution of Jews by Ukrainians during World War II, Yekaterina the Great as liar creating Odessa and Mykolaiv, Khrushchev gifting Crimea to Ukraine as a mistake, Gorbachev setting the republics free as an act of goodwill, or putrid, I'm sorry, but I can't bring myself to write his name any other way, leading a world superpower. Let's break it all down. You're having a hard time digesting the idea that you're being fed lies because you think that as an educated society, you would be able to tell if Russia was lying. After all, you have studied history and you know what's right and wrong. There is a nuance here. Russia didn't just start lying. It's that you just found out. So when did they start lying to us? 1991? Nope. Stalin's regime? Nope. Lenin's regime? Wrong again. The creation of the Russian Empire? Bingo. Peter the not-so-great wanted you to believe that he was great, a ruler of a big empire with rich history. Upon studying the origins of his kingdom, Muscovy, he found out there wasn't much to study or even embellish on. Solution? Do what modern Muscovites do best. Steal. Kiev Rus, or at that time known as Ukraina Rus interchangeably, was in fact a great kingdom with rich history, whose rulers married with the rulers of large and prosperous empires of the time. Then and there, Muscovy became the Russian Empire. Peter worked long and hard in fabricating connections, appropriating and rewriting history to draw himself and the newly founded Russia into Rus legacy. And that's how, based on lies and deception, the great Russian Empire was born. Yekaterina the not-so-great continued in his footsteps, but for her, simply using the white-out marker on the chapters in history that contradicted and challenged the narrative of her now queendom wasn't enough. After all, there were living and breathing ancestors of Kievan rulers right around the corner, Ukrainian Cossacks. Solution? She did what modern Muscovites do best as well, unleashed genocide on them and continuously appropriated their legacy into the narrative that fit the legend of the grand old Russian Empire. Come Lenin, Stalin, Khrushchev, and the rest of the Soviet Union cronies, with all of its independent republics colonized and brought by force into the Russian rule, history became what you'd call a melting pot. Of course, to keep the ruling card in Russia's hand, the idea of a great big empire had to be perpetuated. How do you do that now that all of these independent republics are technically free to express themselves and teach their people who they really are? Solution? Russification. Let me explain. Teach history as one combined entity of accomplishments by Soviet Union at the head with Russia. Erase the language, culture, and identity of all republics. Prosecute and torture those who don't conform. Oh, and make sure the world gets in on this history too, and only the version you approve of. How do you make the people within though, forget their individuality and get on board with your vision? Communism. It's all shared now. History too. The Soviet communist propaganda of shared success, at the head with grand old Russia, of course, has run so deep that it seamlessly seeped into the world post-1991. Russia didn't have to work that hard to convince you that it was the epicenter of the powerful Slavic culture as a whole, and all things great were, of course, conceived by Russian minds. That famous Russian writer Nikolai Gogol, Mykola Gogol, and even as I write this article now, the spell check suggests that I use the Russian version of his name, while it underlines his actual name in red. Born, raised, and educated in Ukraine, sent to St. Petersburg as an ambassador of our culture, forced to write in Russian to be accepted and regarded. That famous Russian painter Kazimir Malevich, a Ukrainian Pole Kazimir Malevich, forced to work in Russia in order to gain success. The likelihood of any given Russian scholar, writer, poet, scientist Google having born in X city of Soviet Ukraine or born in X village of modern Ukraine, former Russian Empire, written under their bio is higher than you think. Go on. Look up Kirill Razumovsky for one. You'll find that he's allegedly a Russian imperial state figure of Ukrainian Cossack descent. But right in the next line, you'll see that he indeed isn't just of some descent. He's the last hetman, ruler, of the Cossack Sich, Kirill Razumovsky, which effectively means he was the Ukrainian Cossack. Now, you can do that on and on with many famous figures that contributed to your view of Russia as the world's great superpower, and that in turn contributed to their modern web of lies being much more digestible. In the Soviet times, when Russia needed a great shiny scientist to demonstrate to the world in a never-ending race for greatness with the US, they just imported one from a republic, say Ukraine, Russified their last name, changed their nationality in the passport, and gave them an offer they literally, under the threat of prosecution, couldn't refuse: to work in Moscow. You moved to work in Moscow because you had no other choice? Sweet, you're Russian now, and so are all of your inventions and accomplishments. Modern Russia doesn't bother importing bright minds and their inventions. They simply buy them from AliExpress, as we have witnessed with a military robot dog. Don't have something to show for yourself? Solution: make it up, steal, do whatever. Just make it appear great. And this is exactly why the West so easily still falls for Russian propaganda today. It's hard to tell because you still haven't dissected all the lies and live in the world in which Russia only recently became this deceiving genocidal monster. For you, it used to be a beacon of great rich Slavic culture all throughout history until this point in time. Alice, the truth is, Russia has always been a monster. You just look the other way and judge the book only by its pretty cover. Had you looked into the table of contents, you would have known that Russians aren't Slavic. They come from Mongolian and Finno-Ugric tribes, and so does their language. That 70% of people in the country you're used to thinking of as powerful and wealthy have no access to gas, electricity, and running water. That Russia, just like its many former names, Muscovy, Russian Empire, the USSR, is an evil empire of deception built on nothing but a strong chokehold on resources of its neighbors and blood of those who tried to highlight the truth. Herojem Slava. And that is basically the article that I wrote on Medium. You can easily access it by going on yulia.medium.com. I think it's a very... Basically, what I was trying to do with this article is I was trying to answer all of your questions as to like, oh my gosh, but everybody thought that Russia had this big army. Oh my gosh, but Russia has nukes. Oh my gosh, but Russia was always this like rich place. Like, it never was. Here's the thing. Russia is so incredibly used to lying. And Russia is so incredibly used to, like, there is nothing to back up their greatness. There is nothing to back up their power. All of these claims are built just on lies, and they have gotten away with lies for so many centuries, not even decades, centuries, that why not keep lying? You know, it's like when Russia wanted to be an empire but had no history to show for it, they just stole the history of its neighbor, right? When the USSR wanted to be this great place but pretend like Russia had all of the inventions, they just Russified every other person who they just Russified the people who came from other places and made them appear Russian, right? It's like everybody thinks that the USSR inventions and all of this stuff came out of Moscow. Like, they physically did, because all of the educated people had to go to Moscow. The reason why you thought they were Russian is because they spoke Russian and appeared Russian, but that's because you had no other way. You had no other choice. Like, you basically had to either Russianize yourself or go to the gulag. Like, they didn't, you know, they didn't give you a choice. It's not even like, you know, they offered you a job and you could deny it and stay in, like, say, Kazakhstan and continue doing what you were doing and just never get successful. Like, no, you would go to the gulag. It was like a rhetorical question. Oh, do you want to move to Moscow and work for the government now? You can't say no. So that's like the whole thing where, you know, and this image of grand old Russia has been built on lies their entire existence. And it wasn't different during the USSR, and it wasn't different when the USSR collapsed. It's just the thing is that, like, we bought it. The Western world just bought it. And Russia has gotten away with it for so long that, that we just, that we just never questioned it. Like, yeah, they have a monopoly on gas, they have a monopoly on on oil, right? And so they're rich. That's a big country, a super huge, powerful country with 145 million population. No one in the West even like ever questioned what Russia is, right? Because realistically, the ethnic Russians, the blonde, blue-eyed people that we're used to seeing, are just the people from Moscow and St. Petersburg. Everything else, they're not even Russian. And I don't mean it in a derogatory way. I mean it in like, those are people from way different cultures, religions, backgrounds, histories, and stuff like that. They just were colonized and Russified. All of their resources were stolen and redirected to Moscow and St. Petersburg, and everything else was quite literally just drained of life and resources. And that's why all of these Russian areas that are not even remote, but areas that are not Moscow and St. Petersburg, don't have water. Literally do not have water and do not have gas and electricity because those are minority regions. And it has nothing to do with them being remote regions. No, some of them are like very, very close to Europe. Some of them are right next to Moscow. Some of them are right next to St. Petersburg. Also, please don't engage with that thing. Just block it. Just block the whatever thing is that called me a warmonger. The article is yulia.medium.com. I hear. So sorry. There were a couple of people asking where that article is found. I wrote the article. Just FYI, full transparency. It's my article, and I wrote it on Medium. Medium is a platform that allows people to write their own articles, basically, and yeah, it's on Medium. So it's yulia.medium.com. Okay, so that's that. Now let's go towards the thumbnail today. So there is this man called Yevgeni Prigozhin. Thank you, Karine. Thank you so much. And Yevgeni Prigozhin is the head of the Wagner PMC, Wagner private military company that they're mercenaries. And they were causing a lot of trouble in Ukraine. They were causing a lot of trouble in a lot of different places everywhere. They were basically stationed. They're ruthless. They're known for being awful. They're known for hiring criminals. Wagner has been recruiting out of jails and stuff like that. And so Wagner is a private military company, so they're a little more effective than like regular Russian military. And Prigozhin somehow in Russia is now considered like this grand leader because, well, Shoigu and their regular military, I guess, is so bad that they're looking for the next best alternative. And so Prigozhin, and he has a lot of influence in Russia now. Like a lot of people respect him, especially the like pro-war junkies, you know. And so he has been criticizing Russian traditional military quite a bit. And I mean, he has been very, very vocal at criticizing the traditional Russian military. And with that, realizing it or not, he's undermining the Kremlin, right? Because right now, I think his approval rating, which mind you, this is a man who has SS tattoos, like SS chevron tattoos on his shoulders and is like very openly neo-Nazi. Well, I mean, he was openly neo-Nazi, and then sometime right before 2022 invasion, he just denied even being the head of Wagner until he admitted to it again, and also denied any relation to neo-Nazism. Meanwhile, the man literally has like a swastika tattoo with an eagle and has like SS chevrons. So it's, thank you, Todd. And so yeah, that's wild, you can't really deny that one. But so he is very, very well respected in Russia right now. And I would say that people probably listen to him more than they listen to Russian generals or even Putin at the moment, because Wagner at least seemingly has some progress in Ukraine, right? And they're ruthless, awful mercenaries who don't care who they kill and what they do. They are just bloodthirsty. And yeah, he's been hiring out of prisons. He's been going to prisons and literally hiring mercenaries out of like Russian prisons. And so he has been speaking out against traditional Russian military and criticizing them and just being really like negatively inclined towards them and just saying how useless they are and how bad they're taken care of and how they're so unprepared. And he's doing that to sort of advertise Wagner and private military companies, right? And I don't know if he realizes it or not, but by that, he's really, really, really undermining the Kremlin and their decisions, which is a good thing and a bad thing, because on the one hand, he's undermining Kremlin and he's undermining Putin, but on the other hand, he's a literal neo-Nazi with like swastika tattoos, and he has a lot of respect in Russia. So there was even a rumor, which I mean, like, it's just a rumor, but there was even a rumor that like he'd be the next dictator after Putin, you know, because Russians like respect him, or at least a lot of Russians do. And the liberal Russians all ran away or are a minority, like the liberal Russians who are against the war. They're not really against the war. They just really don't like Putin. Anyways, so those might not vote for him, but the majority of the country seems like they would. So yeah. So the worst of the worst. Oh, hi, Angela. So yeah. Oh, wait, I know a new word. I know a new word, Angela. It just slipped my mind, but wait. Kelegao. There we go. I think I said it right. John taught me. Every time that he's live with me, which is so rarely, you're never here, and I'm always like, Angela. Oh my gosh. Thank you. Also, wait, this is so cool. It has a sound. I didn't know it had a sound. Que legal. Yeah. Hi, Matt. What language is that? Portuguese. And I also learned beleza, or beleza, which is just cool, I guess. So yeah, so I've been trying to so yeah. Anyways, there is a troll on here. There is a troll on Twitch, and it wants me to speak Russian. No, thank you, honey. I don't speak that foul language. I really don't like dirt in my mouth, so I prefer not to. But thank you for the offer. But yes. So yes. Basically, there is that, and yes, of course, Yeet. And so he's been criticizing the Russian military, and therefore he's been undermining the Kremlin. And you know, in one regard, it's kind of good, but in the other regard, it's not that great, because it's not great that this guy is gaining popularity, you know. Also, someone here says, I think everybody would be curious to see. I mean, curious to see what? Curious to see what? My husband? Well, one, unfortunately, he's back on tour again. 2, I have some photos with him on my Instagram. 3, I really don't like airing my private life online. And he is a very private person. He doesn't really have photos of himself on Instagram. The only photos of him that exist on the internet are of either I took them and put them on my Instagram, or our friends did. And I actually, well, he doesn't like really, he doesn't really like being super, you know, super public, but he does come out sometimes. Also, can you block the person who just said relax? Thank you. I really do not need advice from random strangers, but yeah, but so But so yeah, basically he comes out sometimes whenever he feels like he's comfortable to do that. Don't bend Kayla. Grumpy. Wait, what is going on? Oh my gosh. There is a lot going on here. I'm missing a lot. I'm missing a lot in this chat, but also I do want to say that one of the things that I do want to say is wait. So there are people who are saying who are talking about the Iron Dome system from Israel. So Israel doesn't. Israel's system is meant for a small country. Israel's system is meant for Israel, right? Like Iron Dome would not be necessarily very useful for Ukraine because it's very different terrain. It's very different objects that this air defense system needs to take down. And unfortunately, while Iron Dome is a very cool system and it's very advanced, it wouldn't necessarily work for the purposes that Ukraine needs it for. And it won't take down the drones. It won't take down the objects that fly as low as the drones do. And it's really not meant to protect such a large area like Ukraine is. Like, Ukraine is the biggest country in Europe if you don't count Russia, while Israel is like one of the smallest countries, so, and Europe as a continent, I mean. So it would not be very beneficial. Also, I would say that person that you guys blocked on Twitch, the Jilsum, like I don't think they're like worth blocking. I don't think they're a bad person. I think I just need to explain to them. I think they're Western and I don't think they understand. Oh yeah, there you go. Because I thought you blocked them and I was like, this doesn't, like, I don't think this deserves it. I just think that like there is this whole misconception. So before I dive into the news for today, I do want to address this thing. I do want to address there is Jilsum and they wrote a comment and I want to bring it up. So the comment says, have you not seen the protests and riots in Moscow and St. Petersburg? They're being thrown in jails and killed for speaking out against the war and their government. They're not being killed for speaking out against the world, against the war and their government. I'm not saying you're not pro-Ukraine. I think you are. I'm just saying that I think that you, as a lot of Westerners are, you are a little bit misinformed on what's happening in Russia. And it's not like your fault or anything like that, but it's just, there is a lot of misrepresentation that's happening there. So first of all, Russians are not being like killed for speaking out against Ukraine. There are some cases that make it into the that make it into the news to make it look like Russia has no freedom of speech. Russian opposition, so people who really threaten Putin, yes, those get killed and those get poisoned and those get stuff like that. The reason why Russians are being thrown into jail is because they don't resist. Like if you look at Ukrainian protests in 2014 on Maidan or Iranian protests or any protest anywhere else worldwide, people get thrown to jail, but people get thrown to jail while resisting. As in, like, this is big. Like, people don't give up. Like, there will be someone carried by 2 police officers, and there's 50 people beating up those police officers and trying to free the people who are being carried away, right? Russia has one of the biggest populations on the planet. Like, it's 145 million people against, like, what? I don't know, a couple thousand cops? right? Like if Russians actually wanted to do something, if there were enough Russians who were against the aggression, who were against the invasion, who were against the atrocities, they would have an easy time overthrowing their government. There's so many of them. There's just not enough of them who actually want to do that, right? And when they protest, the way it works is Russians don't want to get scathed for change. And that's not how it works at all. Like you can't get a change in a dictatorship by standing there with a piece of paper and expecting that your rights are going to be respected, right? Because it's a dictatorship. We all know it's a dictatorship. We all know they're going to get beaten up. We all know they're going to get thrown into jail, or at least attempted to. But here is the thing. In every other country, when a protest like that happens, let's say you're at a protest against the dictatorship and you see no, they don't, they literally don't. Like hear me out. And I am Ukrainian, and we had that same situation in 2014. What ends up happening is there are two police officers carrying away a granny. I mean a granny, like literally an old lady, right? An old lady. And all of the 50 dudes that stand next to those two police officers and see them carrying out a granny, they're just watching that granny being carried away. They're watching the granny being carried away. And they're filming it on camera to then show you in the West, like, oh my gosh, look, we can't do anything. Now, I don't know if you've seen Winter on Fire, but that's a documentary about Ukraine. Not Ukraine on Fire, that's propaganda, that's Russian propaganda, but Winter on Fire. We had the same situation, but we resisted, because when someone gets beaten up, if someone gets beaten up on the main square in Ukraine, more people come out the next day. More Ukrainians go and fight for freedom, because fighting for freedom isn't free. And anytime a Ukrainian is being told Russians can't do anything, it's kind of like a slap in the face, because we had the same reality. You say, okay, they're thrown in jail for 10 years. So were we. We had all of the same laws at that time. Yanukovych changed all of our laws to reflect those in Russia. All of our laws were like, if you assault a police officer, like 10 years in jail. If you have gatherings on main squares, 20 years in jail. If you speak against the president, 10 years in jail. If you revolt, 10 years in jail. We had the same stuff. Like we literally had the same thing. The difference is you can't fight a dictatorship. Like, how do you think they're going to fight a dictatorship? So like, okay, if they can protest, if they can't do anything, then how do they overturn it? There is no way, right? But there is a way. The problem is that if there is one person beating up a grandma in full riot gear, and then there are 30 dudes standing aside, 5 dudes, 6 dudes, standing aside and just watching it, of course nothing's going to happen. Of course their protests are not going to lead to anything, because Russians expect to come out with a piece of paper and be respected by the police, and they expect their dictator to listen to them standing with a piece of paper and saying no to war. Of course, if you want to overthrow your dictatorial government, look at Iran. You gotta get down and dirty. You gotta get down and dirty. You gotta expect that you are gonna have to get hurt. You gotta expect that you're gonna have to do something. You're going against a dictatorship. Like, what do you expect? None of the Ukrainians that went to Maidan were like, oh, I'm gonna go protest, but only if I don't get hurt. Of course not. They got hurt, and they got even stronger. Someone gets hurt, more people come out, and more people help. That's the difference. So Russians are just running away. Look, Russians say that there are not enough people who can go out on the streets and protest, right, against the Kremlin, because there's more police. So here's the thing. There are upwards of 2 million Russians that left since the beginning of the mobilization, that left Russia since the beginning of the mobilization. Let's say half of them are children. That's 1 million people. Do you understand the scope of what 1 million people is? 1 million people could go storm Kremlin and nobody would be able to do anything about it. And they wouldn't have to have any like ridiculous protection against riot gear. They would have to have Molotov cocktails and baseball bats at most. because it's 1 million people. They can't be thrown into jail if the vehicles that transport them to jail are turned over, because they're not going to drive. They're going to be on their like they're going to be upside down. There's so many things that you can do, and I'm telling you this as a Ukrainian because we've had a ton of protests and we always stand up for our democracy and we don't care if we get injured. The difference between us and Russians is that Russians want democracy, but they don't want to fight for it. Russians want change, but they don't want to fight for it. Russians want to overthrow their dictatorship, but without getting hurt. And Russians want to overthrow a bloody dictator. That want to overthrow will die, and it will be necessary. Yeah, but that's the whole thing. See, like, that's the whole thing, that, if you want change, you are gonna have to sacrifice something. And I'm not saying that all Russians need to die, but it's like, what do you expect? Like, what do you expect? Like, you see Iran protests, they're very different, right? They're incredibly different. And you see that Iranian people understand the idea that the whole peoples are evil or something, though, is a terrible mindset, though. No, well, here's the thing. I don't think whole people are evil. I just think here's my reality that I live in. Russians say they can't do anything because they're scared of going to jail. Therefore, they will sit and see Ukrainians die so they wouldn't go to jail, because that is the reality of what's happening. That is an actual reality. And then instead of doing something to guarantee that in the future they have freedom of speech and that doesn't happen to them, they just complain that they can't do anything. And literally the majority of Russia, is not against the war, and they didn't protest or do a single thing until it was their ass on the line. Like, those protests weren't against the war, they were protests against mobilization. They did not protest before that. And that's the thing, as a Ukrainian person, when you see someone saying that, oh, but Russians protested, but they can't do this, they can't do that, it's like, we lived in Russia. We lived in Ukraine, literally taken over by Russian politicians. We lived in Ukraine, and our president in 2014 was Putin. Yanukovych was just a freaking talk face. And we didn't let that take us over. And throughout our entire existence, throughout my grandparents, throughout my great-grandparents, every time that I hear stories, every time I look at my history, it is always Ukrainians fighting for freedom and Russians wanting Ukrainians to just literally give them that freedom. I've heard so many Russians tell me Ukraine has to win so we can overthrow our dictator. And it's like, this is a very popular thing online for Russia. And it's like, no, guys, Ukraine has to win so we can push you out of our territory and never have to deal with you again. We are not winning so you can overthrow your dictator. We're winning so our people stop dying. It's not about you. And that's the whole thing, that, like, for somebody watching this, for somebody watching this from the outside versus somebody who has generational trauma out of this, I don't hate Russian people. I just don't want to have anything to do with them. Like, I never want to see Russian people again. I don't hate them. I don't wish them well. I don't wish them ill. I don't wish like bombs landing on them. I don't wish them dying. I don't wish like any, unless they're like the actual people in charge of the decisions and stuff like that. I don't wish them anything horrible, like, genuinely. But here's the thing. This is like 12th time in history that Ukraine has to watch Russian people just be like, oh yeah, but we don't want to sacrifice. Like, we don't want to break a nail to do anything. We'd rather you die, and we'd rather you be buried in forests, and we'd rather you take on our dictatorship so we can live a better life. And it's always been a thing like that. And Russians have always looked down on Ukrainians. And like, at this point in time, you can't look at what Russians are doing and say they are against the war. They're not against the war. They're against dying in the war. They were very okay with the war as long as they weren't dying in it, as long as it was Ukrainians. And so this is a large, large difference. And it's, Take it from someone who's Ukrainian and like genuinely please listen to us. We've gone through this through generations. Russians are not against the war. Russians are against dying in the war. And saying to someone Ukrainian that Russians can't do anything, or that Russians are, and that Russians are, and that Russians are like, you know, that they are against the war and that they don't want to, they don't want to, they don't want to do, you know, they don't want to kill Ukrainians. That's not true. They just don't want to be killed. They had no problem doing all of that when they thought they were going to win and they were superior. They had no problem doing that when their asses weren't on the line of mobilization. It was just that. And also, Vladislav here on Twitch says you should hate Russians. Russians are not people. Here's the thing. Hate is a very strong emotion. To me, hate is one of the strongest emotions one can experience because, you know, when you love somebody, you don't put effort into it. When you hate someone, it takes effort out of you because you fuel that hate, right? I don't hate Russians. I don't spend my time fueling that emotion because they don't deserve it. The thing is, I don't care for Russians. I don't care for their existence. I don't care what happens to them. I don't care whether they're always going to live in a dictatorship. I don't care if they're going to improve their life. Like the second that we push them out of our country, I don't care. Like my interest in Russians only, literally only, extends to the borders of Ukraine and to the borders of European Union where they're harassing Ukrainians. Whatever Russians do in Russia, whatever their like life is post-war, whatever happens to them, it's not my problem. It's their own doing, it's their own country, it's their own life, and they're in charge of it. It is not my problem at all. And so for me, it's like, I just never want to hear about them again. Once we, as the Ukrainian people, push them out of our country, I never want to see them again. I never want to think about them again. I just don't ever, you know, like I want to be free to choose to not to interact with Russians. I want to be free to choose to, you know, walk away from Russian language. And I just don't really want to think about them. That's all. Like, but I don't hate them because hate is an incredibly strong emotion and they don't deserve that from me. That's all. And also for all of those of you who say, oh, you're so close-minded, Russians are not that bad. You know, in my 8 months of doing this, I've met a lot of Russian creators who are super liberal and against the war. And, you know, not a single time, not one of those creators approached me and said, hey, how can we help? Hey, what are we doing wrong? Hey, what can we do better? Hey, how can we help? Every single time in those 8 months, all these people did was fight me on not all Russians and fight me on what I was saying about Russians. Because for them, it's actually more important and they spend more energy on not every Russian is bad than actually doing something that would make them seem like they're not bad, right? So instead of actually doing good things that would make them good people, they spend time on telling me how I'm wrong about Russians, how I'm wrong about Russia, and arguing me and being condescending. And so, yeah, that's my opinion, and it's based on a very vast experience as a Ukrainian creator online. You know, I do face a lot of Russians, and not a single one of them, until I mentioned this last time, then some woman in the comments was like, oh, well, how can I help? But it's like, okay, it's been 8 months and you listened, and at first, the first thing that they were saying was fighting me on not all Russians. Until I said, you know, this is so funny. And then they were like, oh, okay, well, how can I help? And it's like, that doesn't count. What do you mean? You guys should be doing the same as you're asking from Russians. No, we don't owe Russians anything because throughout centuries, Russians have been killing us and appropriating our culture. We don't owe them anything. Sorry. And we don't ask them for anything. Ah. Docile behavior wasn't bred into them with the terror of Stalin and after. Docile behavior and superiority complex was bred into them with Peter I. It wasn't Stalin. Stalin is another product of Russia. Lenin is another product of Russia. Here's like the thing. If you look at Russian history, it has been stolen from the very beginning. It has been appropriated from the very beginning. Russia, even the empire, didn't do anything for itself to show for itself. And this is not docile behavior. This is also superiority complex. And also Ukrainians were under the terror of Stalin. Kazakhs were under the terror of Stalin. Georgians were under the terror of Stalin. Have you seen protests in our countries? We're not docile. Why is it that only Russians always get a discount on, oh, but they've been through so much. Oh, but they've been through so much. Like actually Russians have been through the least in Soviet Union. Russians were superior to everybody else in Soviet Union. Ukrainians were killed for speaking Ukrainian. Kazakhs were killed for speaking Kazakh, not in such large numbers, but yeah. Stalin terrorized Georgia. But none of us are docile. None of us are like, none of us just decided like, oh, okay, whatever, we're not going to do anything. Sure, but none of us ever just sit down and do nothing. The only people who do that are Russians. Russians come to Georgia and act like Georgians are guests there. Those Russians who escape mobilization. Russians come to Kazakhstan and ask like Kazakhs owe them to like take care of them now that they've left. So it's not true. It's very not true, and it's just like, Russian excusionism in a lot of ways. It's just Russian sympathizing and Russian apologism. Because we all have gone through Soviet Union, and actually everybody who wasn't Russian has gone through 100 levels of higher hell than that. We've gone through torture, through repressions, we've gone through Russification, we've gone through ethnic cleansing, we've gone through genocides, we've gone through every forest in Ukraine you go to has mass graves. Every forest in Ukraine, and I mean it, literally every forest in Ukraine has mass graves of tortured people for political repressions. And when you look at graves of people in Russia in some forests for political repressions, they're mostly not Russian. They're mostly minorities of Soviet Union, which is every other republic but Russia. So no, saying that Russia is docile because of the terror of Stalin is not right, because we've gone through much higher terror from Stalin. Russians had it easy. And also, so we just have to exterminate them. No, I don't think we do. I think we just literally cut them off and we let them live in what they've created. They don't want democracy. They want a dictator. Every single time I ask a Russian why they can't protest, they say, well, we don't have an opposition leader. What are we supposed to do? There is no one to lead us. The thing is, Russians always want a dictator. Tsars were dictators. Soviet leaders were communist dictators. Putin is a fascist dictator. But they elect those people. They always want a dictator. It's just that this time they're tired of this dictator and they want a new dictator. So they still want to be told what to do just by a different person. But the thing is, if you give your leaders so much power, you're always going to wind up with a dictator. You know what I'm saying? Because there's no way they're not going to abuse the power. That's the whole thing. So no, I don't think we exterminate them, but I think we literally cut them out. We sanction them out of the fucking wazoo. It's like, we let them be North Korea, because that's what they literally are, and that's what their mindset is. And the thing is, like, one of the reasons why sanctioning them and not letting them run to Europe and not letting them do these things is a good idea is because maybe then, instead of going to Europe and still carrying their screwed up beliefs that Russians are, like, superior, and Russians are this great nation and whatever, like, all of them love Russia, except they live abroad and they don't want to live in Russia, but they still consider Russia superior. If they're left in Russia to face the chaos that they have created and didn't do anything about it, that's the only chance that maybe they'll stand up and do something. Because now they have nowhere to go and they have to fix Russia, right? And if they don't care for fixing Russia, and if they don't do anything then, well then it's like, what can I say, It's lost. It's lost for them. But the thing is, like, in order for them to want to do something, they have to be cooped up in Russia with no way out. Because then they can just run away to Europe and have their screwed up beliefs in Europe and continue thinking they're this, like, superior nation that was chosen by I don't even know what, everyone, and that they're so much better than everyone, and do nothing about their government while they're, like, sitting in Europe and shitting on Europe. It's like, have you seen how many Russians online are, like, leveling Europe with dirt? Europe, America, like, complaining about it daily, saying how terrible Europeans are, how terrible Europe is, like, the lifestyle, the LGBTQIA rights, like, all of this unholy crap, and, like, whatever, how America with its vegans and, like, blah blah. Yet all of them run away to America and Europe from the amazing Russia. All of them run away from amazing Russia. Like this dude who's saying, "Oh, you're speaking horse shit to me right now," on this guy, Russian guy, Nasakinotov, okay? He says, "You're talking horse shit." And that's funny because he is genuinely, probably somewhere in Europe, thinking that Russia is superior, yet he's not in Russia. Why is he not in Russia? So there is that. Anyways, I don't think that nuclear weapons should be used by any means. Jilsum is saying there were plans for after nuclear bombing in Japan. We were going to hit St. Petersburg and Moscow. Should we have? Well, I don't think we should have hit anything with nuclear weapons. I don't agree with that. But I do think that Russia should have been sanctioned and Russia should have been brought to justice from the very beginning. You do understand that Russia literally has a veto power on UN resolutions against the genocide they're waging. They've never been punished by the world for anything screwed up that they've done. And it's time to punish them. And I don't mean like kill Russians and like, bomb Moscow. I mean like, no, cut them out. Cut them off of the world. Don't let them trade. Don't let them have export. Don't let Russian people out of the country, and see how they can't protest then. If Russians can't run away from Russia and they start losing their jobs and their economy goes down the wazoo, but they can't run away to Europe, you will see how Russians can't protest. Because at that point, they're gonna either have to do something or, oh well, there is no saving them ever. Also, let me go grab a scrunchie. I'll be back and I will start into the news, and I will get into the news because we're an hour in, and as much as I love these conversations and as much as I love talking about this in depth, there is news that need to happen. Ні, я розумію українську, звичайно, я розумію українську. Тобто я зі Львова. Добрий вечір. One second, let me go grab my scrunchie and I will be back in a minute, okay? Okay, I'm back. Also, sorry that you had to listen to the sirens. Alrighty, let me just tie that up. My hair is still wet because I washed my hair like right before the stream, and it dried a little bit, but it's like wet on my shoulders, and and it bothers me. So I really wanted to put it up. Okay, so let's do is this way. No, here's the thing, so let me just also answer this really quick before I dive into the news. But Jilsum on Twitch says, like, Jilsum on Twitch says, Slava Ukraini, I have just been saying this because I don't want you guys to become the same monsters. Here's the thing. I don't think we have the capacity to become the same monsters. Ukrainian people, no matter how much we have been scorned, and like, here's the thing, like, again, you guys think that this is the first time that Russia is doing this to us. We had Holodomor in 1930s where 10.5 million Ukrainians died. We have had political repressions in the 60s where like hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians were killed for speaking Ukrainian. 2014, right? We have had 1991. We have had Cossacks slaughtered and completely genocided. Like, we have had this happen to us throughout history, and we have never turned into that. Because the thing is, like, the difference between us is we don't have a superiority complex. We don't think that we're the best nation on the planet. Frankly, we have like a victim complex right now, like we are surprised that people are helping us. We're surprised that people finally believe us. We're surprised that people are willing to listen to us. Like, we're not, we're so far away from becoming like, we're so far away from ever becoming that. Like, we've been tortured and tortured and tortured and tortured, and like every single time we come out on top, and we just come out like being people, because we understand what it's like to be like to be subjected to monsters. Like, Ukrainian medics help Russians, wounded Russian soldiers who have like, killed and assayed. And Ukrainian, we developed an app for Russian POWs to be able to have 15-minute conversations or 5-minute conversations with their family 3 to 4 times a week for their mental health, because their mental health is deteriorating in captivity. That is what Ukrainians are. We save kittens from under the rubble. We adopt dogs on the front lines. I don't think we have a capacity to do this. I don't think we have a capacity to ever be anywhere near the same level of terribleness, or even like close to it. So yeah. Anyways, I don't know. My personal opinion is like, I always, there is this saying, and it's, a good Russian is a dead Russian, right? And I understand that people whose houses were bombed, whose family was killed right in front of them, whose family was killed right in front of them. And I understand why they say that, right? I am lucky that my family has been decently safe so far. And I always make it a point that, to me, a good Russian is not a dead Russian. To me, a good Russian is a Russian I don't have to hear about. To me, a good Russian is a Russian that doesn't bother me, a Russian that doesn't interact with me, and a Russian that doesn't reach out to me. Because all of the interactions I've had with them so far was just them arguing me. And so to me, that is that. It's a Russian who doesn't complain about stuff while doing nothing about it. That's a good Russian, or a Russian that does stuff without going online and being like, well, I did this, and this. I'm a good person. Like, just, I don't understand why we have like a different standard for Russians to be good people than we do for other people, right? Like, that's a good Russian to me, but also I just don't care enough for Russians. Okay. Okay. All right. Oh, thank you, Karine. Thank you so much. Okay, so in the Russian town of Yeysk, an airplane crashed into residential buildings. Local telegram channels report that the pilot ejected. So during pilot training, they are taught that if their airplane malfunctions, which is what happened, above like residential structures, you have to steer it away from where you are and then you have to eject. So you try to save as many lives as you can. This pilot chose to eject himself over a residential building right away. He didn't try to steer the plane away. He just let the plane land on top of that building, killing 16 people and injuring 19 so far. And that was in Russia. This airplane was going to fly into Kharkiv and bomb Kharkiv, but it malfunctioned and ended up basically just instead creating problems for Russia. Air defense forces shut down a Russian operational tactical level drone over the Black Sea, which was detected at the Odessa region. Operational Command South reports. NATO begins its nuclear deterrence exercise. The exercise involves 14 countries and up to 60 aircraft of various types, including B-52 bombers, 4th and 5th generation fighter jets, as well as surveillance and tanker aircraft. Listen. Oh my gosh, you guys, so many sin emojis on Twitch. I love that. Kyiv after the morning incursion of kamikaze drones. I showed these yesterday, but I do really want to show them again because today there was another airstrike, and I think these are very telling images. What just happened? I keep getting telemarketers calling me all the time, and it's so freaking annoying, you know? Okay, cool. All right. What's Twitch? Twitch is a streaming platform. So I simultaneously stream on YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, and Twitch. But the problem with Twitter is I can't see if you guys comment on Twitter. My software doesn't show me your comments. So if you are a viewer and you watch me on Twitter, I would highly recommend that you switch to Twitch, YouTube, or TikTok, because that way you can write comments and I can interact with you. I did say earlier that it's also possible that you just comment under the stream and I will just check my phone from time to time. But it's much harder, obviously, because I don't really get to see it in real time, and I don't really get to, pay the same amount of attention because it doesn't show up right in front of me. Okay. So, air defenses went off in Brovary in the Kyiv region. According to the town's mayor, there is no destruction so far. Let me see. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said the U.S. would not make any distinction in its response to Russia if it used nuclear weapons in its war with Ukraine. The use of nuclear weapon on the battlefield in Ukraine is the use of a nuclear weapon on the battlefield in Ukraine, and we're not going to slice the salami, Sullivan said. Iran is responsible for the murders of Ukrainians, said the advisor of the head of the office of the president, Mikhailo Podolyak. Country that oppresses its own people is now giving Russian monsters weapons for mass murder in the heart of Europe. That is what unfinished business and concessions to totalitarianism mean. The case when sanctions are not enough, noted Podolyak. As a result of this morning's strikes on the Russian invaders, 585 settlements were left without electricity. Where possible, units of the State Emergency Service bring mobile power plants to supply electricity to the population. First Deputy Interior Minister of Ukraine, Yevgeni Yenin. Ukrainian forces shot down 85% of the Iranian drones that Russia used to attack Ukraine from the evening of October 16th to the morning of October 17th. So, there was a very funny thing that I wanted to bring up that's kind of like the light at the end of the tunnel with this. So there is a meme in Ukrainian meme space right now, and it says February 24th, the government. Please don't panic. Please stay away from like shelling. Please don't, please like go into the basements. Please please basically like just don't hurt yourself, right? And now after October 10th, Ukrainian government, please stop trying to please stop trying to take down kamikaze or Shahed drones on your own. So there is this Azov regiment serviceman, call name Wikipedia. I follow him. I've like talked to him a few times. I think he's a very, very bright dude. And so he was in intelligence. He's actually a drone operator for Azov. He was in Russian captivity. He's amazing. He's a very smart guy. He was recently on the tour of the United States trying to represent Ukraine and fight for return of POWs and stuff like that. And so he's fantastic. And so yesterday he posted a story and he was like, I see all of these publications saying what to do when there is a drone strike, and I don't see anybody saying what not to do. And so here is what I'm telling you that you shouldn't do. And he's saying, and he's basically saying like, please stop trying to take the drones down by yourself. Oh, thank you so much, Ryan. We have APS operators for that, and they're trained professionals. Please stop trying to throw pickle jars at drones. That's not how it works. He was like, please stop filming the drones. Like, what are you doing? So he was just funny because there are like Ukrainian people trying to take Shahed drones and kamikaze drones. So, I mean, not like surveillance drones, combat drones, like huge pieces of technology down by themselves by throwing objects at them from their windows. And I mean, if this isn't the fighting spirit of Ukraine, I don't know what is. But also, like, it's not very, it's not very beneficial. Neither is that gonna actually do anything. So he was just like, stop it, guys. Like, please stop it. Let the professionals handle it. But just the whole point that Ukrainian civilians are just like, oh, drone, pickle jar. It's the funniest thing I've ever heard. So yeah, the monitoring group of the Belarusian Hajun project, citing representatives of the Ministry of Defense of Belarus, reports that Russia, in addition to 9,000 troops, will move about 170 tanks, up to 200 IFVs, and up to 100 guns and mortars of caliber over 100 millimeters to the Republic of Belarus. 8 Shahed 136 kamikaze drones were shot down in central Ukraine this evening, Ukrainian Air Force's report. The Russians carried out 9 missile and 39 airstrikes during the day on Ukraine and launched about 30 attacks with salvo rocket systems. More than 25 settlements were hit by the enemy, according to the General Staff. Due to the attack on the Kyiv thermal power plant, the environment suffered. The damage was estimated at 21 million hryvnias, which is approximately $572,000. Ministry of Environmental Protection and Natural Resources. As a result of the rocket attack, the open land area was contaminated with destruction waste, the ministry explained. Japan is ready to help Ukraine with rebuilding its energy infrastructure, Ministry of Energy of Ukraine. The statement was announced following the meeting between the Minister of Energy of Ukraine, Herman Halushchenko, and the Ambassador of Japan to Ukraine, Matsuda Kuninori. At the meeting, special attention was given to the preparation of the Japanese side to help Ukraine with rebuilding the damaged or destroyed due to the warfare critical infrastructure objects by giving the necessary equipment and machinery in particular. Those energy projects will be performed in cooperation with the Japanese International Cooperation Agency, reported in the statement. So one of the very interesting things is Japan has been a very good ally to Ukraine, and Japan, while not having military, and Japan, while normally staying very neutral and while normally having very harsh immigration laws, has been welcoming Ukrainians, not staying neutral, and Japan has been very, very vocal with their support to Ukraine, which is very good. And Japan also has a reason to do so because Russia has been occupying Japanese Northern islands Kuril Islands for a very long time now, and Japan wants those islands back, and they are Japanese islands, and they should have never belonged to Russia, and Russia should have never taken them or occupied them. And so I think that the strategy for this, strategy here for Japan is that Japan wants the islands back, and once Russia deteriorates, Japan is going to come take what's theirs, and also show that they've helped Ukraine in the process. Iranian instructors have already been spotted in the occupied Kherson region, center of national resistance under Special Operations Forces of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. This is so interesting because oh my gosh, I love when people come on here and try to call me Ksenia Sobchak, like, honey, you think you are offending me because she's liberal? You're actually offending me because she's just as bad as every one of you. No, I don't, I don't identify with her. Also, I don't look like her. I don't have a horse face, last time I checked. And, I'm normally not mean to people, but when it comes to Ksenia Sobchak, I don't look like a horse. Anyways, there was something that I wanted to check and I forgot to check. Oh, my email. Sorry. So basically, Iran keeps denying supplying weapons to Russia, and I don't know why they keep doing it, because it's so evident that they are. There's so much proof that they are. And there is really not much they can say to disprove it. Like, there are Shahed drones landing on Ukrainian soil all the time as we take them down. And now there are Iranian instructors, and there's so many legends that they tried to come up with in order to justify basically what's happening, and in order to justify why it isn't Iran. But it's like, well, they try to say that Russia just stole Iranian blueprints or took Iranian blueprints and manufactures it themselves. Well, Russia doesn't have materials for it, nor the space or capacity to do so. And Iran is allegedly being helped by Tajikistan to develop those. The Office of the President showed photos of the Ukrainian women who returned home from Russian captivity. Let me remind you that 108 Ukrainian women have been exchanged from Russian captivity. 37 of them were at Azovstal. Some of them have been captive since 2019. And this is an all-female prisoner swap. And right now our government is working on all-for-all prisoner swap. Hi, Michael. This is Krotevich, Botan Krotevich. He's the head of staff at Azov Regiment, and he's working very tirelessly with along with Azov Regiment to negotiate return of prisoners of war. Ukrainian DJ Daria Kolomyets and the Kyiv Independent editor-in-chief Olga Rudenko are on the list of the Next Generation Leaders by Time magazine. In different years, the list of Next Generation Leaders included Timothy Chalamet, Greta Thunberg, The Weeknd, and others. So here's the thing: editor-in-chief of Kyiv Independent. Getting this is an incredible accomplishment. First of all, one of the things that I want to point out is that Kyiv Independent became a worldwide known and popular publication with the beginning of the war. They became a publication about 2 to 3 months before the war. So those were very accomplished journalists from other publications who wanted to report on the news without censor, who wanted to have their own they just wanted to be the best versions of themselves as journalists, and they wanted to be able to report independently, and they wanted to choose their own stories, and they wanted to chase their own stories and stuff like that. And so they created Kyiv Independent to bring us Ukrainians originally the best news there is for Ukraine, and they wanted to do it in English as well. And their team is incredibly well-versed and professional, and all of them are breakaways from other publications because they wanted to do independent news. And it so happened that they existed only for 2-3 months before the invasion, and now they're one of the most read publications in Ukraine and worldwide because everybody relies on their news for the invasion of Ukraine, and it's fantastic to see how far they've come in such a short period of time. At the beginning of the war, Russian propagandists were spreading fake news about biological weapons, biolaboratories, and combat pigeons. Ukrainian defenders decided that this was no longer such a bad idea and brought their fighting four-legged fellows. Take a look at this video. It's supposed to be a joke.
А пам'ятаєте, раніше гуляла інформація по інтернету на
So this is what
рахунок
he's saying.
поросят, качок, гусей і так далі.
He's talking
Ви
about
думаєте, це
bioweapons.
Ніякий то був не жарт. Наразі ви можете побачити, як я несу вахту з бойовим котом.
He was saying, you thought this was a joke? This isn't a joke. You can see my combat cat. Ukrbоронпром, a state-owned concern of multi-product enterprises in various sectors of the defense industry of Ukraine, reported that it is completing the development of new kamikaze drones in response to the Iranian drones used by Russia. In fact, they are creating their counterpart. The declared characteristics are a flight range of 1,000 kilometers and a warhead of 75 kilograms. So a Ukrainian-made kamikaze drone. A pregnant woman who was killed as a result of a kamikaze drone attack in central Kyiv. The woman's name was Victoria. She worked as a sommelier. Vika died in her own apartment along with her husband Bogdan and their cat, the company says. She was the only girl in the department, but she never showed weakness. There were no difficult tasks or challenges for her. She genuinely loved wine and her job, says Good Wine Company. This was her. This is the pregnant woman who died in the drone strike on the apartment building. Ukrainian defenders walk through the liberated territories of their homeland. Take a look.
Це буде Україна.
A book with President Zelensky's speeches was published in Great Britain. The book, A Message from Ukraine, includes 16 speeches the president has personally selected to explore Ukraine's journey since 2019. The publisher says it is the true story of a nation violently defending itself from Russian aggression. Valiantly. And it is the story of a people leading the world in the struggle for democracy. Above all, it is a battle cry for us all to stand up and fight for liberty. If not now, when? The publishing house has received the rights to publish the book worldwide, including in the United States, Germany, Spain, Portugal, and other countries. The European Union is increasing military assistance to Ukraine to 3.1 billion and launching the EU military training mission for the Ukrainian military. Joseph Borrell, High Representative of the EU for Foreign Affairs, announced this on Twitter. Canada has imposed sanctions against Russian propagandists and the TV channel Zvezda, a statement from the government. 34 individuals and one legal entity were included in the sanctions list. The list includes Russian actors, Putin's assistant Medinsky, and others. National Police says the bodies of 152 civilians and 35 military personnel were exhumed in Liman, Donetsk region. About 40 burials remain unexamined, which are difficult to access. A preliminary review of exhumed bodies in Liman showed that people died as a result of blast wounds. However, law enforcement officers are also aware of cases of death by violence. An examination is now underway. Ukraine calls on Iran to immediately stop supplying weapons to the Russian Federation. Statement of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. At night, the Russian invaders fired at Mykolaiv with missiles. The attack took place in a 2-story building. The body of a man was found under the rubble, and search and rescue operations continued. This was announced by the head of the Mykolaiv Regional Military Administration, Vitaly Kim. We need more, much more. Ukraine's new ambassador, Oleksiy Makeyev, arrived in Germany and asked for weapons. I thank the federal government for all the help and weapons that have been sent to Ukraine so that we can defend ourselves in this barbaric war. I have to be frank, we need more, much more. And I will work to ensure that we Europeans, Ukrainians, and Germans make our Europe safe, the ambassador said in a video message. A shooting at a training ground in the Belgorod region a few days ago probably occurred due to the fact that the Russians unevenly distribute the mobilization load depending on ethnicity. And this predictably causes conflicts on ethnic grounds, experts at the Institute for the Study of War say. So a couple of days ago, there was a shooting on a training ground in Belgorod, and it was a shooting among basically Russian military conscripts, and I think 17 of them died as a result of this altercation, and so it was based on a racial background. On the night of October 17th to 18th, 5 kamikaze drones of the Shahed 136 type were shot down over the Mykolaiv region, the Air Command South reports. Here's a video that Volodymyr Zelensky posted of the consequences of shelling of Mykolaiv, and I want to show it to you full screen. So let me send it to myself so you guys can see it full screen. I just really want to be able to save this video so you can see it, because I think, well, there is, a lot going on here. A lot going on here. And a lot of it is, one second. I'm trying to see something, because I think that one of the things, I have so many videos that I need to delete from this iPad too. I need to go through my, really go through my technology, and I really need to delete some stuff, because every day I send myself a ton of different videos, and then I never ever clean up my that, and just the memory is super hard. It's snowing in Indiana? Really? Oh my gosh. Karine here says it's snowing. Oh, sorry. Michael says, Michael says that it's snowing in Indiana, which is crazy. Oh yeah, Kat was showing that to us yesterday too. The Indiana snowing. Okay, one sec.
Чергова ракета С-300 вдарила у двоповерховий дім в центрі міста. В результаті утворилася така вирва. На жаль, людина, яка переховувалася у будівлі, у підвалі, загинула. Людину засипало. Будівля стара, удару не витримала.
And the guy says, unfortunately, it's an old building, and so it did not, it did not handle the blast, and the person who was hiding in the building, unfortunately, passed away. And another thing is, it's in the very, very, very downtown of the city. By the end of the year, it is possible to reach an agreement on a security zone around the Zaporizhia NPP, says Rafael Grossi, IAEA head. The European Parliament approved the request to include in the agenda of the plenary session a debate on recognizing Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism. MEP from Poland, Bogdan Żonca, in an interview with Polska Agencja Prasowa, said, "We are pleased that the discussion will take place and that in November we will vote for this resolution, which will allow us to represent the real relationship between Russia and the EU and show the barbarity of Putin and his entourage, as well as those Western Europeans who still do business with him," commented Zhonsa. And that is definitely that is a dig at Hungary. Also, I'm going to show you the photo that basically stands as a thumbnail to this post, and this is exactly what I think should happen. I don't think we annihilate Russians. No, I think this should happen. Close and don't open. That is particularly exactly what should be happening. Close and don't open. Just a dome, just a glass dome over Russia. Close it and don't open it. And I mean like a metaphorical dome. On the morning of October 18th, the Russian invaders again began a massive shelling of Ukrainian cities. It is known that in the morning in Zhytomyr, a hit on a power facility was recorded. At present, there is no electricity and water in the city. Energy facilities in Kyiv and Dnipro also suffered. Currently, the relevant services are working at the site of all hits. Details on the extent of damage and casualties are not available. Heroям слава. Another mass attack by kamikaze drones on civilian and critical infrastructure is designed to put psychological pressure on the Ukrainians themselves, but does not affect the course of hostilities, experts from the American Institute for the Study of War say. Here's the thing. One of the measures that Russia is doing with their new general, Svidotkin, here's the thing. There's this one Ukrainian creator who consistently mispronounces the name of the Wagner head. I'm not going to say who it is. And I specifically do not correct her, and I don't tell her that she mispronounces the name. I think she grew up in a different country, and it's hard. It's some Russian names in general are difficult for her. And I'm like, no, you know what? You keep doing it. I don't respect this person enough to actually call him by the right name. But yeah, Surovikin is the general. That general's entire blueprint is shelling civilian infrastructure. He actually very much supports shelling civilian infrastructure, and that's one of the things that he thinks is the beacon of successful warfare, because it breaks the spirit of civilians. And once you break the spirit of civilians, the fight is over. And that's what he's trying to do to Ukraine. What he doesn't understand is that you don't break us by doing that. You actually make us angrier. And you make us stand up against you harder than we've done before. We will spend all of our lost money. We will spend all of our lost food. We will spend everything that we have, but we are going to buy more drones. And we are going to push you out. The more you torture us, the more of our defenders you kill, the more of them you imprison, the more of them come back completely disfigured, the harder we're going to hit back. That's that. Sponsor of PMC Wagner Yevgeni Prigozhin and related social networks are increasingly talking about the ineffectiveness of traditional Russian military institutions, which can indirectly undermine the power of the Kremlin, experts at the Institute for the Study of War say. Yesterday, the Russians killed 13 of their own citizens and another 19 civilians were injured. The Russian Ministry of Defense published the same statistic after the Su-34 crashed into a high-rise building in Yeysk. The photo shows the wreckage of the aircraft. So it ruined a part of the building, and that's the pilot that catapulted out of the airplane instead of steering it away from civilian infrastructure. The United States must confront the Russian Federation in Ukraine. Otherwise, Pandora's box will open, which could lead to a new conflict in other parts of the world, said U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, speaking at Stanford University. The territorial integrity of states must be respected, and their borders must not be changed by force. This is what we're trying to demonstrate in Ukraine, Blinken said. Also, I see there are a couple of new Ukrainians on my Twitch, so I do want to say something to them. I do have a YouTube, And I wanted to let you know that I have interviews with Tork. He is Azov and defender of Azovstal. He's freaking amazing, honestly, one of my favorite people in the world right now. And I did an interview with him. There are 2 parts out of 4, and 2 more are coming out. Well, probably next week, actually, because this week I'm releasing an interview with Aiden Aslan, and I'm doing my best to edit it. But I was trying to edit it by yesterday, but there is so much, and I can't decide if I want to just cut a bunch of stuff out and leave the most important things and do 1 part that's 40 minutes, or do 2 parts because it's a 2-hour interview. It's I don't want to make it too long. So yes, so Aiden Aslan, otherwise known as Cossack Gundy, 36th Separate Marine Brigade, one of the 5 British POWs that recently were released from Russian captivity. I'm going to release the interview with him, any day now, hopefully tonight. So yeah. So if you guys want to, there are 2 interviews with Tork, and they are both in original language and with English voiceover, done by ours truly, Matt, one of our moderators. He's fantastic, and he's a fantastic voiceover artist. Also, Jason, hi, good to see you. How did the call go? I'm anxious to find out. Ukraine received a military aid package from Italy. This package will strengthen the country's defense capability, while the details of the assistance are not disclosed. Landing at the airfield in Machulichi of 3 supersonic fighter interceptors MiG-31 was recorded in Belarus. The Pentagon is convinced that Russian missile terror against Ukrainian infrastructure is necessary in order to instill fear and panic in Ukrainians. But it has been historically proven that this does not work. The EU countries do not plan to impose restrictions on gas prices from Russia in the near future, it is reported by Bloomberg. Since October 10th, 30% of Ukrainian power facilities have been destroyed. Oh, they're rescheduling with you. Oh no. It caused massive power outages across the country. There is no room left for negotiations with the Putin regime, President Volodymyr Zelensky said. The Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine recognized the Chechen Republic of Ichkeria as temporarily occupied by Russia and condemned the genocide of the Chechen people. 287 deputies voted in favor. The Parliament of Estonia declared Russia a terrorist state. Also, Ukraine recognizing the Republic of... Who is calling me, and why do I keep getting these weird calls? What is going on? I'm so confused. Oh my gosh. Basically, Ukraine recognizing Republic of Ichkeria as temporarily occupied by Russia is very big, because 2 Chechen wars, Chechen, before it was Chechen, was called the Republic of Ichkeria. And that, after Russia took it over and after Russia basically instilled Kadyrov as its government, it was called Ichkeria. And so Ukraine has recognized the Republic of Ichkeria, from which a lot of Chechens have fled to Europe. They have been pushed out of their home by these Kadyrovites. So I really hope that one day Chechen can be free again and Ichkerians can come back home. In the liberated Liman, Donetsk region, the police exhumed bodies of 5 children killed by the invaders. Russian attacks on Ukrainian cities led to improvised results for the armed forces of Ukraine at the front, according to Russian attacks on Ukrainian cities led to improved results for the armed forces of Ukraine at the front, according to the Pentagon. According to the U.S. Department of Defense, attacks designed to sow panic amongst the civilian population in the hope of reducing people's resolve do not work, which has been proven historically. One of the representatives of the Pentagon at the briefing stressed that such actions of the Russian Federation are another war crime. If you look back at history and look at the air campaigns that tried to strike at the psyche and suppress people, then this does not work. And if it comes to that, then you saw that in the case of the Ukrainians, this led to an improvement in their results. The US Department of Defense transcript says exactly what I was talking about just now. So far, no institution of the United States, Great Britain, Canada, the EU, and many others have announced their intention to leave Ukraine, said Oleg Nikolenko, spokesman for the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry. This is, hi, Joan. Good to see you. Haven't seen you in a while. But, Lundqvist, that's so interesting because that's I think that was, Blomqvist. Okay, but so that's a very similar last name to the last name of the journalist from the book Girl with a Dragon Tattoo. I didn't watch the movies. Well, I watched it for a second, but I didn't like it. So I watched the movie. I read the books. Because I guess I do have a YouTube channel. I have a YouTube channel, and it's the same as my Twitch, the same as my Twitter, same as my Instagram, same as my TikTok. Basically, if you want to find me on a social media, and you look up Yulia the way that it's spelled wherever you are right now, and you can't find me, then I'm not on that social media, because everything my handle is the same across all social medias. Thank you so much. But so yes, this was in response to Russian propaganda that some embassies and personnel are leaving Ukraine. Athens will transfer Soviet BMP-1s to Ukraine as a result of receiving the German BMP Martyr. European partners allocated a tranche of $2 billion to Ukraine. The Red Cross must publicly announce who does not allow Ukrainian prisoners to visit. The International Committee of the Red Cross, ICRC, avoids saying that Russia does not give permission to check the conditions of detention of Ukrainian prisoners of war and civilian hostages. This was stated by the People's Deputy of Ukraine, chairman of the Verkhovna Rada Committee on Legal Policy, Denis Maslov, during a briefing at the Ukrainian Media Center. Today, many of our prisoners of war and civilian hostages are in Russian captivity. The conditions of detention of such persons should be checked by the ICRC, but those released from captivity testify that they have never seen its representatives. According to him, the ICRC emphasizes its readiness to send its representatives to places where Ukrainian prisoners are kept. However, they do not have permission to do so. But they're also not saying whose permission, right? And they should clearly state that Russia prevents them from seeing prisoners of war, which is what is happening. Also, there is something that I wanted to respond to something maybe, and I didn't see. Or, oh yeah. Okay, so Armin posted his quote of the day, so I'm going to put it up on the screen and I'm going to read it. Russia's long authoritarian traditions condition it to view its relations with other countries in terms of pure power. Russia does not have friends. It has competitors and it has vassals. Christian Carroll wrote this in 2017. The world should have given attention to this warning. Yeah, exactly. Russia doesn't have friends. Russia has people that they hold a chokehold on, and then Russia has people that are scared of them, and then Russia has competition that they want to one up. Поздать Російській Федерації. Сергій. Mobilized Russians complain about Chinese tourniquets causing tissue necrosis. As it turned out, the tourniquets purchased by the Russian army are not suitable for stopping bleeding. They're designed to draw blood. It is because of this that many die in overcrowded hospitals in the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine. So yeah, here's the thing. How does an army not know which tourniquets to purchase for their soldiers, for those tourniquets to be effective in stopping bleeding? So tourniquets that stop bleeding versus tourniquets that are meant to draw blood are very, very different things. So it's crazy to me that an army purchased a bunch of tourniquets that are meant to draw blood. Those tourniquets, in fact, don't stop it. They pump blood. It's so great. It's like the opposite effect. You will bleed out faster. I don't know if Russian army is just trying to kill Russians, but it sure looks like it. Like, what? Crazy. First, they tell them to use tampons. First, they tell them to use tampons so they can get anaphylactic shock, I presume, and then they tell them, and then they basically buy like stuff that's gonna make them bleed more. Jesus Christ! Oh, Russia, how did you survive this entire time? So yeah, see, one of the biggest issues is that Ukrainian economy is tanking, while Russian economy, even with the sanctions, is not falling as fast as it should be. Also, no, we were talking Russian military, but I'm assuming you say that American military buys hammers for $80 as well. I mean, while that's ridiculously stupid, at least they can afford to do so, you know? That's stupid military logistics, but at least they have the money to do so. Russian military just bought, you know, a ton of tourniquets without actually realizing that those are blood-drawing tourniquets, not blood-stopping tourniquets, which are two different things, you know? Like the stuff you would get at the doctor's office to draw your blood, which makes you bleed out much faster than it would under normal circumstances. Also, to all of my Ukrainians, breathe. Kayla over here is not Ukrainian, but she learned Ukrainian and she speaks it very well. And I'm putting it on the spot right now. I'm putting her on the spot right now, but I'm very proud of her. And I think her Ukrainian is perfect. So, you know, just when you see Kayla in the comments over here and she speaks Ukrainian, just know that this is a person who put a lot of effort into learning Ukrainian. Okay. On October 17th and 18th, 51 Shahed 136 unmanned aerial vehicles, 10 cruise missiles, and an Su-25 attack aircraft with which the Russian Federation attacked Ukraine were shot down, Yuri Ignat, spokesman for the Ukrainian Air Force Command, said. Ukraine joins the Convention on Extradition. The relevant bill was voted by the Verkhovna Rada today. In favor voted 305 deputies. Verkhovna Rada is basically like our Congress. Ukraine will officially request Israel for the supply of air defense systems, Minister of Foreign Affairs Dmytro Kuleba said. Today, a note will be sent to Israel with a request to urgently provide Ukraine with anti-aircraft systems and to start high-quality cooperation regarding Ukraine's acquisition of appropriate technologies. The Iris-T surface-to-air defense system, which Germany recently handed over to Ukraine, has already demonstrated the first results of its work in battle. Yuri Ignat, a spokesperson of the Ukrainian Air Force, reported this. Threads of the Nord Stream and Nord Stream 2 gas pipelines were blown up, according to preliminary findings of an investigation by authorities of Denmark, the Associated Press reported. Ukraine will receive PZH-200 anti-drone systems and MLRS from Germany by the end of 2022. Well, Germany certainly activized a little bit. Iran has agreed to transfer UAVs and ballistic missiles to Russia, reports Reuters. Ukraine requires the International Committee of the Red Cross proper determination in obtaining access to Ukrainian prisoners in Olenivka, says Andriy Yermak. Moldova plans to purchase air defense systems after Russian missiles crossed its airspace during a massive shelling of Ukraine on October 10th. The president of the Parliament of the Republic of Moldova, Igor Grosu, announced this. Also, I want to say something. I've been seeing the rhetoric of Ukrainians talking about how we should not be, how, the world is telling us to fight the Russian fight, the Belarusian fight, and the Iranian fight. And that, Iran, Belarus, and Russia should fight their own fights and just leave us alone. So here's the thing. I agree with Russia and Belarus. They should do their own thing, and they should stop telling us to freaking win so they can overthrow their governments. And they should stop telling us that there is no free Ukraine without free Belarus, because evidently that's not true. Ukraine has been free this whole time. Belarus, not so much. And also the brotherly nations tale, please stop with it. I have a whole long rant about it on my stream yesterday, if you want to check it out. But one thing I want to say about Iran is that Irani women and Irani resistance are not asking us to help them. They're not telling us to come actually solve their issues. They're not telling us to help them overthrow their regime. They're actually doing stuff, and they're actually standing up, and they have Maidan all over the country right now, and they are doing things. They are effing stuff up, and they are resisting, and they're resisting bravely, and they're resisting amazingly. So they are pretty incredible. So here's the thing. What I think we should do as Ukrainians is, first of all, we should support the Iranian resistance regardless, because if we don't, then we're hypocrites. Then we are completely hypocrites. But we should amplify Iranian voices. We should amplify the voices of Iranian women. We should give them platforms as much as everybody was giving us platforms, right? First of all, Iranian revolution, if successful, is going to overthrow Iranian regime and reinstill human rights in Iran, particularly women's rights in Iran. Where Iran is right now, literally killing the Iran Islamic Republic or Islamic dictatorship is killing Iranian women solely for being women. And Iran is assisting Russia in killing Ukrainian people solely for being Ukrainians. So again, you should totally support Iran because you should, and there is no reason not to. But if you don't see a reason why, support Iran to help Ukraine. Because we help Iranian women, they help us. Because once the Irani terrorist Islamic State is overthrown, the new Iran, the free Iran, is going to stand with Ukraine. And they're not asking us to fight their fight. And we should support them. Russia blocked the website of the project I Want to Live, which explained how to safely surrender to the Ukrainian armed forces. Of course they did. Before that, they blocked the website that was letting Russian people access their dead relatives that died in Ukraine. Us? Are you Ukrainian? Так. А що? В тебе є якісь запитання до цього? Я таки українка. Народилася і виросла, і паспорт в мене український. А що таке? Українка не може розмовляти добре англійською мовою? Яка дивина, правда? Yeah, I'm Ukrainian, born and raised and a citizen. Imagine that? Why? You're surprised that I can speak English well? Because what? Ukrainians aren't supposed to speak English well? Us. Yes, us. Me and my fellow citizens. I'm very, 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 very tired of people questioning my freaking Ukrainianness just because my, I don't know, arbitrary lack of accent. Anyway, so so Russia blocked the website that Ukrainians created in the beginning of the invasion, where Russians could find their, the like soldiers that were their relatives that died on the Ukrainian battlefield. So this is not surprising. NATO plans to transfer hundreds of anti-drone stations to Ukraine in the coming days, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said, according to Bloomberg. General Staff says Belarus continues to covert mobilization under the guise of training sessions. Yes, we've seen those training sessions. The spokesman of the International Committee of the Red Cross, Alexander Vlasenko, said that their team did not arrive at the contact line where the Ukrainian delegation was waiting, as the team was already in Donetsk and was ready to visit the prisoners in Olenivka when it receives permission and minimum security guarantees. Iran confirmed supplies of new weapons to Russia. Where they're used is not the seller's problem. The agreement between Iran and Russia was concluded on October 6th when an Iranian delegation arrived in Moscow. Where they're used is not the seller's problem. We do not take sides in the Ukraine crisis like the West. We want to see the crisis resolved diplomatically, the Iranian diplomat said. Yeah, of course. I am not in Ukraine right now. My entire family is. I was born and raised in Ukraine. I am from Lviv. So I came here for my final year of boarding school and then college. I've been in New York for the past 11 years. Well, I want to say the first 5 years, I didn't necessarily live here. I went to like school here. Well, the first 6, and I still came back to Ukraine. I came back to Ukraine the first 4 years. Back and forth, but Ukraine was my primary place of residence. But I've been living in New York for the past 11 years. I went to college here. I went to boarding school here. Then I worked here, and now I'm married to my husband. Life happened so. But yeah, no, yeah, that's why I figured you're new, and that's why I'm responding, because I figured I'd just give some background. So I was born and raised in Lviv. I'm still a Ukrainian citizen. That's the only citizenship I hold. My entire family is in Ukraine, and I don't mean like I have some family in Ukraine. I mean like my mom, my dad, my grandma, my grandpa, my other grandma, my aunt, like my entire immediate family lives in Lviv. And that's where I was born, and that's where I was raised. And I know I sound arbitrarily American to people. I am very good at languages. I speak 6 languages. I just have an ear for languages. But I'm Ukrainian. I'm very much Ukrainian, not American Ukrainian, just an Americanized Ukrainian. Okay, Putin is actively pressuring Lukashenko to join the war in Ukraine, namely to use his ground troops, said Andriy Zahorodnyuk, former Minister of Defense of Ukraine and chairman of the board of the Center for Defense Strategies. According to him, everything in the Russian Federation is currently subordinated to one idea: to bring Ukraine to the negotiating table. That is why everything they do is aimed exclusively at that. As Russia is already exhausted, it lacks the strength to continue any offensive actions. Lukashenko, on the other hand, is not ready to assist because he understands that it will be the end of him. The end of him. The first thousands of dead military personnel will undermine his regime. So basically there is that. 6 languages are Ukrainian. Unfortunately, Russian, I do speak it. Well, I do have the capacity to speak it. I do understand it. I refuse to speak it. Me and my mom, so I am basically, this is all I had for today. My mom and I used to speak Russian to each other my whole life. I'm from Lviv, but part of my family, my dad's side of family and my dad, we always spoke Ukrainian to each other. I went to a Ukrainian school. I consider Ukrainian my primary language. I spoke Ukrainian to all of my friends. But to my mom, my grandma on my mom's side, and my grandpa, we always spoke Russian. And since February 24th, everybody on my mom's side and I speak Ukrainian to each other. I just refuse to speak Russian. The only person I still speak Russian to is my grandmother. She's in her 70s, and her Ukrainian is horrible because she grew up in a very Russian-speaking environment despite being from Lviv. She has had a couple of heart attacks, and she does not have like an affinity for languages whatsoever, which is also why she doesn't speak Ukrainian after living in Lviv for 70 years of her life. But she's the only exception that I'm willing to make, because I know that it's going to be incredibly difficult for her to speak and to learn. But I like speak Ukrainian to her, and she speaks Russian to me. I speak like a mix. I speak Surzhyk to her at this point, but I try to speak some Ukrainian to her. The problem is that like she understands everything. She has a hard time responding. And also she has like a really Russian accent in her Ukrainian, and she takes a lot of Russian words and turns them into Ukrainian. And frankly, it's just like an ear bleed to listen to. So for me, it's very difficult because every single time I want to be like, no, but we're trying. So that is that. Also, Mariana, Tork's PayPal in order to donate for his apartment is in the description of every single one of my YouTube lives and every single one of my YouTube videos. Just scroll down and you'll find it. And also, what I did want to say is I want to do the fundraiser for the Theragun for Tork. We're still at $20 because I haven't done an official fundraiser, but you can. There are two options where you can donate to Tork. One is tomorrow on the live, I'm going to do a fundraiser for the Theragun, and I'm going to buy it on the live, and I'm going to send it to Anastasia's address in Wales, and she's going to send it straight to Tork. So I want to do a fundraiser for the Theragun, and I hope that we can raise the full amount, and I'll buy it straight on the live in front of you guys, and I'll ship it straight on the live in front of you guys. So I would love to do that. And also you can donate to Tork, to Tork's apartment fund, because he's from Mariupol and his family lost everything there, and he is a defender of Azovstal. And, he is trying to save up some money so he was trying to save up some money to buy an apartment for his parents. When is this? So the Theragun fundraiser tomorrow during the news live. I will introduce it. I will have his PayPal on screen all the time, and I'll keep reminding it. And hopefully by the end of the live, we can purchase the Theragun. Oh my God. Thank you, Lauren. Oh, the little hot air balloons. So for those of you guys who don't know, on TikTok, there are these like animated GIFs, and they're really pretty. And so I have a little tattoo. It's a hot air balloon, and there is this gift of these like beautiful hot air balloons, and they're very pretty. Sorry. So yes, so I speak Ukrainian. I speak Russian, unfortunately. Choose not to, but I speak it. Polish. I speak Italian, German, and English. But I mean, like, I can say a couple of I can get around in French, but I don't speak it well at all, so I don't include it. I understand French for the most part if it's written. If it's spoken, not really. Bonjour. And I'm trying to learn Portuguese because, my husband is Brazilian, half Brazilian, and I've learned some new words recently. I've learned beleza, and I've learned que legal. There we go. Okay. Alrighty. Thoughts on Azov. I have a video pinned straight to my profile, so you can go ahead and watch it. All right, guys. I would love to learn Irish. Oh my God. Oh, it's so awesome. All right, guys. I have to run because I need to edit the Aiden video for you, the Aiden interview for you. He actually just messaged me, so I need to respond to him to see what he was saying. And I will see you guys tomorrow. And Armin, yes, German grammar is way complicated, but the thing is, like, they have like tense conjugations, and so does Ukrainian. So it's kind of like not as difficult as it would be switching from another language. Like, they have nominative, accusative, dative, genitive, and stuff like that. And we do too. Although we have more than they do. Anyways, all right. Bye, guys. See you tomorrow. Nice meeting you too. Bye, bye, bye.